Hey everyone, welcome to the Clydesdale CrossFitter and Friends. My name is Scott Schweitzer and I am the Clydesdale CrossFitter. Today we have Kat Shear.
Hello.
And Amy Radowski.
Hey.
And Charlie's MIA today, but that's kind of normal these days. He's got a lot going on in his life and we understand that, so we'll just keep moving on. So, hey, if you like what you see here, we're trying to bring you a lot of good content. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Hit that notifier, hit the like button, and leave us a comment.
Yeah, I want to know.
Yeah. We like to hear from you. It always gets us excited when we see there's a comment there, things that you want to see, things that you like, and we'll take that into account and keep moving forward. So this week we are bringing you an interview with one really smart guy, Dave Lipson. Did a conversations with tongue-tied today. Dave Lipson did a conversation with us from quarantine in the state of Florida, and that's not where he lives. He kind of got stuck there, but he was so kind to at least get on and do a little podcast with us. And it's really intricate and technical about kind of what he's about these days. And I hope you like it. I really geeked out over it and thought it was pretty cool. So with that, we'll go to the interview and we'll come back with some news afterwards. Hey, Dave, how's it going?
What's up, man? How you doing?
Doing great.
Scott,
welcome.
I was so surprised. I thought, they said, hey, you're on a podcast. And I looked and I'm like, well, there are 5 other people on this podcast.
Yeah, we love that we have lots of friends.
Strength in numbers.
Exactly. Oh, out of the gate, we just want to say congratulations to you and Camille for pregnancy. And I understand there's a little bit of rough water with that, though, because you're not home right now.
Yeah, no. Well, first, we're so excited. We're both so excited to have Camille pregnant. We've been trying for a while, and this has always been a dream of ours to have a family. So we're stoked. But yeah, I think everyone right now is facing challenges, and one of the challenges we ran into was we kind of got caught and deferred to trying to do the elect the more safer choices versus the more comfortable choices. So we're down here in Florida. We came down at the end of February and we had a really long road trip planned, starting here with a supplement sponsor of mine and working our way up to the Arnold Fitness Festival, going to teaching a seminar, doing a sanctional appearance over the course of 3.5 weeks. And right before we were supposed to leave this first leg, I just started kind of getting the heebie-jeebies about leaving the country while this stuff was happening around the world. And so I said to Cam, I'm like, hey, why don't we just let's call our doctor and see what the doctor thinks. And the doctor was like, under no circumstance, don't get on a plane. And I was like, okay, that makes sense. So we were lucky enough we were up in Orlando and we were lucky enough to be kind of close to a place where I had a long professional baseball career before I was ever in CrossFit or training. And for years and years, my parents, they bought a home next to the spring training complex where the Texas Rangers were down here in Florida, and they would come and they bought the home literally just to watch me in spring training every year. And then they kept it as a winter home. So we weren't too far from that. So we came down here. It's like a tiny little town, really isolated, just a couple old people around us. And we live on a canal. And we said hey, let's just go down there for a week and try to see what we need to do. I was thinking oh yeah, we'll post up here for a couple days and maybe drive back home or something. And at that same time, things started getting pretty bad in Denver and Boulder. And where Camille and I live in Colorado, it's so beautiful and gorgeous. It's super isolated, way up in the mountains. It's exactly where you would want to be during a pandemic. However, we both have these businesses, and the businesses are, internet-based businesses, and we don't get internet service because we're so high up. We're at 10,000 feet. We don't get internet service up where we are. So we have offices downtown to be able to drive down to town every work and, work on all of our business stuff. But that was obviously a bad idea to be around people in a shared office space. So we just ended up staying here, and we've been running daily workouts live for our athletes and doing a tremendous amount of work here just all day, sitting on the computer, coaching athletes, putting out new challenges and, running our programs basically. And now, not knowing what the future holds, we found an obstetrician down here. So I think we're just going to kind of wait and see, but I think it's likely we might actually stay here during Cam's entire pregnancy until she maybe delivers, and who even knows after, just to make sure that, she's nice and safe and has everything she needs, where she wouldn't, potentially get sick. Because I know, like, being pregnant, it's like one of those categories where the doctors really warn you, like, hey, you have a compromised immune system because your body is always trying to protect the baby. So we just want to play it as safe as possible, which includes me not going into a gym anymore too. So we pretty much keep to ourselves. It's funny, like, we'll get a package delivery and somebody will try to, like, approach the front door, and I'll, like, leave it at the bottom of the driveway. Yeah.
Well, it's nice that you guys have the flexibility with your businesses being internet based, that you're able to do that. And
oh yeah, like we feel so lucky for a lot of reasons right now. One, we have a good, safe place to stay that's pretty comfortable. So, in February, at the end of February, when we kind of got the sense that we might be here, we went to a used equipment distributor and we bought like $2,000 worth of equipment. So, like, I have dumbbells up to 150 pounds. I got a multi-gym system in the garage. So, like, we were kind of almost anticipating, like, what if this lasts for 6 months, right? Yeah. And then the other thing is, like, the house is comfortable, but there's a canal in the back and we have a boat. So we can, like, go out on the water and go be in nature a little bit. So it's not like some of our friends who are in Colorado who are literally locked in their apartments. And, even now, like, Colorado's getting, like, blizzards still. It's almost May and they're still getting blizzards. So it could be a lot worse. And from a business perspective, I'm sure you guys know and have a lot of empathy for, like, all these gyms and these gym owners we know are under tremendous amounts of stress. Because, their businesses are shut and landlords hopefully are understanding. But, I think we were in a place before this happened where our jam has been online training at home since 2015, so, like, we've been doing this for a while, and we try our best to, obviously we want to maintain our business, but we're trying to, like, help out some gyms and, like, give them accesses for these at-home resources, and let their members do our programs for free. Or we've been running Zoom workouts for these gyms, just to try to, the members in CrossFit, everyone is so loyal to the gym, but at a certain point, that $200 a month bill, when a lot of people are out of work, starts to weigh on you a little bit. So, I think from that perspective, we weren't as affected as some of our friends who are all kind of, like, very worried for their business. And I think everyone's a little worried. They're a little worried for their health, a little worried for their finances. And I think that all kinds of, it's bonding the whole world right now. It's like collective fear.
So before we get into sort of your background, I have to tell you this, that I have to say that I'm not surprised at all that Camille is pregnant after those hot pictures that you guys posted and then reposted again today.
Yeah, well, so there's so many things there, but one of the things that Camille and I got exposure to in the past couple of years is the bodybuilding scene. Mm-hmm. And, the reason why I was doing that, both personal and professional, was to, one, just gain experience and knowledge, but also credibility, so that I could speak to both, CrossFitters. CrossFitters are pretty familiar with me, and I've lived in that community for a while, but bodybuilding is completely new. So my goal in the past few years has been to establish credibility in the bodybuilding community by competing and showing that, like, a CrossFitter can go and compete at a high level in bodybuilding. And you train, like, it's so hard. It's such a, I don't know what the word, it's a real mental test, but it's just like the physical uncomfortable suffering of, like, dieting and preparing for the show is unlike anything I'd ever been through. So when you do that, you want to chronicle it. Like, you want to make sure that you have pictures to be like, hey, I looked like that one time. So we got hooked up with this photographer who's so cool. Her name's Casey Cole, and she does these, not like necessarily, like, we've seen fitness photographers before, like in the gym, like staging a barbell or something, but we wanted, like, she has really cool lifestyle photos that at first we saw her stuff, and Camille and I had never taken any photographs together like that. Okay. And, like, we have pictures of us, like, in a gym together, but there's no pictures, like, of just us being a couple and loving each other. And, like, Casey's pretty creative. I mean, you can take it as far as you wanted to with hers. I know she specializes in naked photos, right. So we still kept it pretty clean, like keeping our pants and underwear on and everything. But it was just nice to kind of show, and for people to even see, like, that part of us beyond just the gym is, like, we are, a husband and wife who are really in love with each other. And so, yeah, we took some really cool photos. Those are the ones that you guys saw. There's other hot stuff that'll probably never come out. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yep.
So let's dive into your background a little bit. You said you're a professional baseball player, and so I take it you were with the Texas Rangers?
Yeah, so I played I had like a long professional career, and I pretty much bounced around from organization to organization across multiple levels of minor league baseball. At the end of my career, I played on 13 different teams and in over 50 different cities. So, chances are when I hear a city, when somebody's like, oh, I'm from Delaware, chances are at some point in my baseball career, I played in Wilmington, Delaware, actually, you get a really cool sense of the country. But I'd done that circuit from the time I was a little kid. I loved baseball and athletics. So, like 3 sports, track, baseball, a little bit of football, a little bit of basketball. But as you matriculate to higher levels, you kind of usually end up figuring out what your sport is. And towards like the middle of my high school career, the writing was on the walls. Like, I was okay at these other sports, but people were really like, hey, you're going to go and play professional baseball one day. And I'm like, okay, I'll do that. So yeah, that kind of, happened. And baseball was like, and I'm sure you guys ever played like sports before in high school or college, like, you know that when you play a sport from the time you're a little kid and you're good at it, at least you get to play at a higher level, so much of your identity gets wrapped up in that sport, right? So like, when someone would introduce me during that time of my life, let's say I went home to Thanksgiving and we have some strangers at the house, people would introduce me as, this is Dave, the baseball player, and then one day your career ends and you're like Zoolander, where you walk out and you look in the puddle and you're like, who am I? If I'm not a baseball player, who am I? And you get to redefine yourself. And I was really blessed to find training after my baseball career where I felt like another avenue that had the potential to share some gifts that God gave me, So it was like, I just feel really blessed to have found that avenue where not only was it something that I liked, but something that I could tell that I had some talent for. And then from there, I just went on to meet awesome people and mentors and, get some really, really blessed opportunities to get to express it. And, as you kind of go on, you keep redefining yourself and going down different avenues. But like, I think like, once you're an athlete, you kind of always think of yourself as an athlete. It's just like the difference of how you're expressing those things.
Yeah. So Dave Lipson 1.0 baseball player, what was your physique like in college?
So you guys would laugh, but when I was growing up, when I was younger, probably like under the age of 23, training or conditioning to me was like taking out the trash because it was generally used as punishment. So I was pretty gifted where I could just get by on my natural athletic ability and I could throw a ball really freaking hard and, I'd show up and do that. And I really didn't need to do much else to be successful. And it wasn't until I had like a really bad injury and I completely torn all the ligaments and tendons in my elbow and I had to have it reconstructed and went through a surgery called Tommy John surgery where they kind of do a Frankenstein deal. They take one tendon from one part of the body and graft it into another part of the body. That I really started looking at training because, I just tell people this moment, it's a funny moment. Like you have the surgery and like your arm is in a sling and the first 4 months, all you're working on is being able to straighten out your arm. So it's like a dial fit system where every week you go 3 more degrees, right? And then you can, fully open your arm and you can start training and throwing, trying to throw a baseball. And I remember the day, it was like right around Thanksgiving where my mother has always been like my greatest supporter athletically. Like she's always been the one like making the brownies for the team and wearing all the gear and, cheering in the stands. And so I remember on Thanksgiving after the surgery going out to a tennis court with her. And I was supposed to start throwing a tennis ball. And before this, like I was an athlete, like I could throw a ball like in 95 miles an hour before the surgery. And the first time I tried to throw a tennis ball, like I couldn't throw it 20 feet. Like I was not able to get it to my mother. She was throwing harder than me at the tennis ball. And it was like this moment where something clicked where I was like, oh shit, like, I can't just get by on my arm anymore. Like if my arm is going to be the weak link, then I'll have to figure out a way to compensate for it with my body. And I made the decision that I was going to make myself the biggest, strongest player in the whole league that next year. And I was 185 pounds. And within the year, I'd gone from 185 to 225. And it was a process of like learning. Like I said, like I never really trained before. I just kind of like avoided it like it was like chores. And, you know, I would drive, at that time I was living in Rhode Island, and I would drive 3 hours every Monday to my physical therapist at the Hospital for Special Surgery, which is a cool hospital where, you know, if you need any type of special surgery, or if you're a high-level athlete and need like an ACL or a shoulder reconstruction or elbow reconstruction, this is where the professional athletes go. And I would drive all the way down there just to go to my physical therapist so he could show me how to lift. And we were literally like on these like Cybex machines, and he's like, okay, you're going to do chest press, and you're going to do leg extension, and you're going to do a pull down. And, you know, it kind of started there. And, you know, being untrained and kind of being motivated too, you know, within a few months I could put like the bottom pin on those machines. And then I went and, you know, coordinated with a strength coach and learned how to lift with like compound lifts and deadlifts and back squats. And when I returned to the season the next year, I was the biggest kid on the team, and everyone gave me a lot of flack because they said, you don't look like a baseball player anymore. You look like a professional wrestler or a football player or something. And, you know, I got what they were saying, but at the same time, this was in college, you know, I would always bring up like, you know, major leaguers, they look like major leaguers. Like they look like Greek gods, like those guys that we want to be like. They have this physicality. So why wouldn't I want to have it now? Because form follows function, right? And I was hoping that function in this case would follow form. And luckily I was right. Like I came back and I was a much bigger and stronger, and I could throw harder, and I had a great season. But the thing that really got me the opportunity in professional baseball was my physicality, because on the field, you could basically look at all these like skinny baseball players and look like a men amongst boys, and scouts would recognize that. And the fact that you had those skills that could match up and project at the next level gave me an opportunity to go and start a career. And as I, you know, got into professional baseball, one of the things that I continue to do is like, I just love the idea of training and, you know, getting the most out of my talent, because there are so many people in professional sports that are equally talented. You know, no one in professional sports is not a good athlete. But, you know, you can separate yourself by, you know, putting the extra work in, or, you know, basically maximizing your athletic ability by, you know, by working on your physical body. And a lot of my teammates in, you know, through the years of professional baseball, they would see me and they would be like, hey, I want to train with you, Dave. And so I would take them to the gym and I would just kind of show them what I was doing, but I was not a trainer. I had no idea how to train people. I was like, yeah, I'm doing bench press, I'm doing this, I'm doing that. And, you know, it was a natural progression out of that, leaving professional sports years later and going into training. You know, I went, and you go to get your first job and it's terrifying. He's like, I'm going to sit at a desk and what am I going to do? Like be a banker at Wells Fargo? And the idea of like training, I'm like, oh yeah, I could totally show somebody how to train. And just like anything else, you know, like you start off as like a very bad trainer before you can be okay, before you can be good, before you can be very good, before you can be great. And I've, you know, been through most of those steps, at least the first ones of being pretty bad. You know, I remember my first job at like New York Sports Club, and it was terrible. They would make you like pick up weights, and you had to try to solicit people to train with you. And I hated that. I hate the idea of like soliciting somebody. I never got a single client like trying to solicit someone to train with me, but I did get clients by like in my training session, I would see somebody looking at me and I would be like, hey, come train with me. And that's how I still get clients, you know, I'm like, yeah, like this is like training, who wants to join me? And it's like a big bro session. So yeah, that was kind of the transition from pro sports into training.
And then you took a trip to California and went out to Aromas to check out the CrossFit Games. I've heard you tell that story. It's amazing.
It's so funny. Like, I had gone through my first real job in training. Like I got this job at like New York Sports Club, and I just tell like, it just kind of sucked because I wasn't learning anything. And I had a friend that I was my trainer that would kind of help me prepare for each spring training camp. He ran like a sports specific, you know, athletic development clinic, and he moved up to the Northeast where I was from. And so I was like, hey, you know, can you help me prepare my resume. I studied for a big course called the NSCA CSCS. So he was kind of teaching me. He's a really smart dude. He's like a PhD in exercise science. And he was helping me prepare for these interviews. And he was like, hey man, why don't you just come work with me? And I'm like, okay. And so, I remember working with him, and it was like, literally, it reminded me like a kung fu master, because, the first day I was like, oh, I'm going to be a trainer. I'm going to train people. And he's like, you're not ready. You're not ready. You're terrible. And he's like, yeah, but I took this certification. He took it. He's like, oh, I'm going to wipe my butt with this certification. It means nothing. Like, the only thing that it means is experience and knowledge. So what you're going to do is you're going to watch me train people. And then every once in a while, I'm going to let you step in and try to emulate what I'm doing. And that's how I really started to learn how to train somebody. So fast forward, I get this job in New York with like this gym. It's a ridiculous gym where it's all celebrities and actors and actresses, like a crazy place. And I was training there, and one of the trainers who was doing it, she was a former pro bodybuilder, and she was also a gymnast, and she wanted to do the strength training with me, but she kind of found this workout online called CrossFit, right? And so we pull a workout and we do it together, and be like, oh, it was cool. We had no idea what we were doing. And we, after a while, just being unfamiliar with the movements and stuff, we came up to the conclusion that like, we have to find, there's actually like these things called affiliates, where there are coaches that just teach this, because I thought it was just this online thing. So we found an affiliate in the shadiest place of New York City. It's like the fashion district, in this beat up building on like the 5th floor with holes in the wall. I called it CrossFit hepatitis, because it's like blood and nails coming out. And we do this workout, and it was awesome, right? And at the end of the workout, the trainer is like, oh, you guys are great. You should try to do the CrossFit Games. And I'm like, what's that? And he kind of explained it to me. And I'm like, that's cool, man. But like, hey, dude, I'm a professional athlete. Like, I'm not trying to be the best at exercising. Like, that just sounded so silly to me. Like, no. Like, I want to, train celebs and athletes and be an athlete myself. And I didn't even think it was a thing. And I didn't give it a second thought until later that year. My birthday, I kind of gifted myself a trip out to California to go visit some old teammates and my cousin. And I was like just doing a road trip just to kind of hang out in California. And as I was driving up, I remembered that, they said like, oh, there's this CrossFit Games thing there happening. And I was like, all right, I'll look it up. And it just so happened like I was free that weekend. I didn't have any plans. So I drove up from LA all the way up to Aromas to go check it out. And it was so surprising to me, because I thought it was going to be like a legit event. And it was like, I wasn't sure if I was in the right place. I was like, it's like going to, like, you think you're going like the CrossFit World Championship. You're like, okay. And you're on a dirt road and you're like, is this like the backyard wrestling world championship? Like, what am I looking at here? And it was cool. Like it was Dave's ranch, and in the middle of nowhere. And it was cool to kind of see the beautiful scenery around that part of California. But it turns into like a dirt road. And then I saw all these cars parked on the hill. And the first thing I noticed was there were a bunch of like Hummers with affiliate logos on them. And I remember thinking, how the hell do these trainers avoid Hummers? Like, how is this possible? Like, a trainer hustles to make $100,000 a year. How are you driving around a Hummer? It just didn't make sense to me. So that was kind of interesting. And you walk up to the front gate, and there's just like a lady there who's like, hey, how you doing? Are you a spectator or are you a competitor? And I took a pause, and I was like, wow, that's probably the deepest question anybody's ever asked me. Because it's like, am I a spectator or am I a competitor? I'm like, well, no, I'm a competitor. Like, I'm not here to watch, And I was like, yeah, sure, I'll jump in. You guys I could see people doing jumping jacks, in the background or whatever. I'm like, yeah, sure, I'll do it. So it was funny. Like, you could go and you could pick what heat you wanted to compete at. You could select what time you wanted to go or what workout you wanted. It was like 4 or 5 workouts in the whole weekend. You just got to schedule them at your own discretion. And it was just, that was really the first time I ever did CrossFit. It was at the CrossFit Games. And it was so weird to me. Like, they had this like chest to bar Fran. Like, I was doing strict chest to bar. I'd never done a kipping pull up before. I like tore my hands to smithereens, like run as fast as you can up a hill and back down for a quarter mile, and do this thing with like deadlifts and burpees. And then this heavy, not what was called heavy, Grace, right? With 155 pounds. And that was cool. Like, I really enjoyed the training that weekend, but what I enjoyed the most was I was amongst a group of trainers who I looked at them and I could see like a lot of myself in them. Like they were all former athletes. They all loved training. They were all competitive, and they were a team. Like they were a community. And I grew up on a team. Like I'd never been without a team. And so, you know, it just so happened that I became friendly with Dave, and he took me out to dinner with Coach Glassman and Coach Bergner. And the first time I went out to dinner with those guys, I didn't think Coach Glassman was Coach Glassman. I actually thought Coach Bergner was Coach Glassman, because everyone was calling Coach Bergner, you know, Coach. And he had this he looked like a coach, you know, he's wearing like a military outfit. And I'm like, oh yeah, that must be the guy who like came up with this stuff. And Greg, I was like, who is this guy? Is he like the IT guy? Like, what is this? And then there was other guy, Mark Ripito, who was hanging out with us, and he was just rambling on and on. I'm like, well, this guy's completely nuts. And, you know, like, I was just like, you know, the personalities were awesome. But it's the kind of thing where like you go back to New York City, and it's the seed that if you nurture it, it can grow into this whole thing. And that for me was like a huge moment, because if I hadn't gone there, I don't know if I'd ever would have, maybe I would have, maybe I wouldn't, but it was like the thing that kind of got me intrigued enough to come back and like, hey, I want to learn more. I'm going to start going to this affiliate. I'm going to take a level and course. And even the trainers around me, like they were watching me practice these kipping pull-ups with my hands that were like all torn up from the games. And they were like, what are you doing? Like, are you stupid? Why would you try to do that with your hands all torn? I'm like, it's CrossFit. You wouldn't understand. Like, you know, like, it was a counterculture thing. You know, I found a CrossFit affiliate in New York City that was in the basement of a church, and it was like Fight Club, but I learned the movements, and I just started to understand the program. And the more I understood it and kind of saw its utility and effect, the more I wanted to do it with my clients, and the more I started getting kicked out of gyms trying to do it with my clients. So at a certain point, like I kind of had to become my own business. And so I was like an independent trainer in New York, training one-on-one clients, kind of doing the CrossFit method with them, you know, hybrid with some of the other stuff that I found utility in. And that it just kind of went from there. And when you start doing this and sharing it with other people, you know, one of my best friends in New York was this girl named Denise. And I started doing CrossFit with her, and I was showing it to her, and then she would come to the courses with me. And as we started kind of going through that process, we actually were on the same trajectory where like we took our level 1 and level 2, and then they asked us to intern on staff, and then we got on staff, and we, you know, spent years and years. And now Denise has been a flow master on staff for like, you know, 7 years or something. But we, you know, we kind of started in the same place with just like the intrigue, and like we had found something really new and cool.
So what got you into being a member of the seminar staff?
So, you know, it really was something where the seminar, when I took the seminar, I was very intrigued by the trainers, because it wasn't like the information they were delivering. Like the information was great, but they had awesome personalities. Like they were fun, they were entertaining, they were funny, they could lecture. And they had, what I saw is like, oh yeah, I could totally see myself being one of those guys, because I was media trained through sports, and I'd done stuff on TV with fitness where I was like a fitness personality guy, and NBC on a show called Fitness in the City with Dave. So it was part of a subsidiary of a show, like a variety show called LXTV, where they would play it in cabs and stuff, and I would be a spokesperson. He taught me how to do the, you know, presentation stuff, or public speaking basically. And so I was like, oh yeah, I could do that. And I also at the same time started doing videos of me lifting, and Dave, who I was friendly with, would like send me a workout, and he'd be like, what do you think you can do for this? I'm like, I don't know, I'll do it. And I'd film it and send it to him, and they would post it on the CrossFit main site. And then, you know, one of my friends who I had done some strength training with, Rob Orlando, you know, he was doing strongman competitions and seeing some of the stuff I was doing. And I was like, hey, Rob, like you would totally crush this. Why don't you do it? And he started sending in videos. So we both started to become kind of popular as athletes online by posting these videos of us doing CrossFit workouts, but like heavier. And I think that popularity, it helped us like kind of get into a position where Dave said, hey, why don't you try going on staff? We'd love to have you on staff. All these people are interested in what you're doing. You would fit in great. And so he offered an internship. And then you go through this pretty rigorous process, which is a really hard process to get on staff. Like, I think people think it's just a kind of thing where you wear a red shirt and try to look cool. But there's actually, a lot of development that it takes to be able to establish the training system, the vernacular, the knowledge of the content and everything like that. So my first internship on staff, they were like, hey, I don't think you're ready for this. Why don't you come back in a year? And I called Dave and I'm like, put me on the books for 2 weeks from today. And I came back 2 weeks, and they're like, oh, because I learn quick, right? I know that. So I'm like, let me try again. So I came back 2 weeks later and they were like, great. And it took a couple internships and then I was on, and then you kind of start learning the content and getting familiar, and you teach people in the small groups just the movements, and it's very much a cookie cutter system that the staff uses to teach these movements. It's like by the books or color by number, right? And and then when you listen to enough lectures and you study, they're like, okay, why don't you try to give this lecture? Like give the lecture on the push press, or give the lecture on the air squat, give the lecture on what is CrossFit. And so you kind of continue to add on to your repertoire once you've given the lecture a certain number of times, and they'll give you another lecture. So, over the course of the 10 years I taught on staff, I'd given the same lectures hundreds of times. Yeah. Like I could literally so memorized in my head that I'm like, oh man. And it's cool because when you give it, you gain a deeper understanding of what you're saying. The more you talk about it, the more you see it, it's kind of like it makes that evolution from information to knowledge, right? So it's like, it's not just something I said, but it's something I'm doing every week or seeing in the people. So, that kind of occurs slowly over time. But at a certain point, you're like, you kind of, I think the seminar is great. The information is amazing, but at a certain point, you kind of start having your own ideas, and you develop your own conclusions of what you think is best or how to explain things. Like these are basically Greg Glassman's words that people are repeating every seminar. So I think as trainers, it's natural to start to learn more and to kind of come up with your own thing, right? I mean, it doesn't make sense just to limit yourself to, being somebody that just repeats someone else's information, but maybe as you evolve and learn, you start, creating your own content.
And was that the birth of Thundrbro?
No, not really. I had kind of started with Camille. We had done stuff. We had done some courses together where we called it a Dave and Cammy camp. So we had done our own camps. We had done our own online programs. Thundrbro was something completely different that was just born out of necessity for what was happening to me as an athlete. Because after years of competing in CrossFit, and trying to compete like a CrossFit Games athlete, I'd hit a point where I was really just not in a good place physically or emotionally, right? I was kind of, just getting peer pressured into other people's goals and other people's methods of training. And it really wasn't helping me. So, the short story of it is I developed some really bad back issues. And the issues were really common. It's like degenerative disc stuff where discs start to, crunch down and deteriorate a little bit. But I'd accrued a number of these.
Yeah, we're in the masters. We all know about the back issues.
You guys have all been there, right? Yeah. And so, I had kind of gone through this process where, let's say, I'd do CrossFit and I'd hurt myself. So I'd stop and I'd try to rehab my back, and then I'd go back and I'd hurt myself. So I'd stop, and then I started feeling bad that I couldn't do what I used to do, and I'm never going to be able to compete with the Games athletes, and I'm surrounded and I live with the Games athlete. And that's what people gave me a lot of attention for, is being a big, strong guy. And so it got to the point where I couldn't train at all. And I was starting to actually lose function in my leg. I had nerve damage where I was losing feeling in my left leg and having to, it got really scary at that point where I'm like, man, if I'm this bad at 34 years old, what's this going to look like at 44 and 54 and 64, right? If I get to not have a leg, So so I came to the conclusion that the first thing I needed to do was just stop what I was doing with training, like stop those pain triggers, which for me are the common triggers, are things like load, like really heavy load, and speed. When you start moving so fast that you're losing position or you're moving really ballistically, like I need to get those out of the program. The complex things like the squat snatches, the muscle ups, like I've got a torn rotator cuff, a torn bicep tendon, a really shitty back where like whipping myself around is a terrible fucking idea. So I'm like, I'm going to get rid of that stuff and I'm going to just let the CrossFit conditioning be the conditioning. I'll practice the movements, I'll, do that. But me being myself, I had surgery. I was lucky. I had to go to like a number of surgeons to find the right surgeon that said like, hey, I can fix you, without someone who's like, you're just never going to train again. Because that's what I was just being told. Be like, well, just stop training. Like you could just live a life and not train. Like that's not an option for me. And I had this surgery. It was incredibly painful. They drilled holes in my spine to make room for some nerves. They tried to repair some discs and just did a bunch of stuff. And I was about 2 weeks on the couch. And for me, it was the moment where I was just completely still and I got time to think like, what do I want from this? Like, one day I'm going to have a new life. Like I'm going to be able to train again. And when I have that new life, how do I want to use it? And it brought me back to like, what is my original why? Like, why would I ever go in the gym? What's my reason for being here? And it just brought me back to like me, 15-year-old Dave in high school, like in front of the first time we were in the weight room and you grab some dumbbells and like whatever, you start doing some bicep curls, like I want big arms, I want to get chicks. And I'm like, oh, that's why, because I want to look good. That's why I want to train, because I want to look good. Like, yeah, I want to be functional. I want to be strong. I want to be athletic. But the biggest thing I want is I want to look good. I want to have imposing physicality. Like I had heroes when I was growing up and they were wrestlers and, superheroes. I'm like, oh, so I want to look like that guy. And I think like 99.9% of people that probably ever enter a gym have the same two derivatives of this goal. It's like look good and feel good. Yeah, I just want to look good and feel good. And so I was like, okay, well, what can I do? I've never, ever explored bodybuilding. I've never really we say we're doing bodybuilding, but we don't really know. And like, if you want to do something and have the knowledge, you have to fully do it. So I said, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to start learning about hypertrophy, and hypertrophy is the process by which muscles grow. And I just use that time to kind of study, and I read some great books like The Science of Muscle Hypertrophy by Dr. Brad Schoenfeld, a number of different books and people really smart in the field just from like the academic perspective. And I just wanted to understand the mechanisms, like the anatomy of a muscle fiber. What are the adaptations that take place when a muscle fiber gets bigger? How do you get those adaptations? What are the mechanisms that correlate with that and the training factors that look like in the gym? And I was lucky enough to actually get on the phone with Dr. Schoenfeld and have some really long, awesome conversations. And I said, okay, I think I understand the methods. Now, how can I kind of combine that with CrossFit? Because one of the things that you can kind of tell about bodybuilders, the double-edged sword here is like, if you just do bodybuilding, if you don't do anything else, you may develop some aesthetics, but in some ways you're just a display model only, because you're not working on the application of that fitness, or the scope of your training is so narrow that you're not really going to be fit and versatile. And I love the idea of fitness and longevity and health and just being like the ultimate athlete, right, that can do a bunch of things. So, my goal was to maybe start to think of ways to bridge the gap between bodybuilding and hypertrophy work and CrossFit. And I just started using myself as my own laboratory. And I started messing around. At first, I just designed a program for myself that now we coined as like the 90-day Get Huge program. But it was a system where we do 8 sets of 8 reps with a 3-second negative. So that's a slow eccentric down and a 30-second rest. And I chose to do it with, instead of machines, to do it with like things like barbells and dumbbells, or things you could commonly find in a CrossFit gym, with movements that were maybe a little bit more compound. The cool thing here about this program that was really attractive to me after back surgery was that I was able to elicit a hypertrophic effect without load or speed. So I knew those two things were the triggers. So with like 40% of my 1 rep max, I could still, develop musculature and size. And because things were slow, everything was nice and controlled, I could really secure my back and be in a strong position. And I think, if you guys have been through surgery before, especially back surgery, it really does a number on your body, because One, because of the anesthesia. So it fucks up your digestion. You really don't, you get constipated. And when you have back surgery, like you have to have somebody like stand you up and help you pee and everything, like it's terrible. And you don't have any appetite, right? Because you're all fucked up on the painkillers and things like that. And then you're not moving at all because you're like basically lying down for 2 weeks. So, when I went into surgery, I was, 200 and, maybe 10 pounds. And I dipped all the way down into like the 195s. I know for some people that might not seem that much, but for me, that's like the lightest I've ever been. So my goal was to like put some muscle back on. So I used this system in the course of 3 months just to see what I could accumulate back. And I was able to go from 195 to 225 in those 3 months.
So during that time, did you do anything like cardiovascularly?
So what I would do is like the first thing I was allowed to do was like the elliptical, right? So I would be like, and like part of coming off of surgery is setting achievable goals. Like my goal day one after surgery wasn't to back squat 500 pounds. It was literally to just be able to like walk 100 feet. And there's a picture of me in the walker, like walking up my driveway and then doing some dips on my walker and then like coming back down. So like, and then as you progress, as you're allowed to do a little bit more, you can incorporate other things. But the program that I wrote for myself was like, it was really robust in that, you do 8 sets of 8 reps for each movement, right? So that's 64 reps each movement. And you do 8 movements total, right, every day. So that's like over 500 repetitions. Yeah. And the whole thing, you're not really resting that much. Like you're doing 8 sets with 8 reps with a 3-second negative down, and then you rest for 30 seconds, and then you're going again. So there is like, my heart rate is high the whole time for about 90 minutes. So there was no real reason to do that. And it was only 3 days a week because that's all I could train. I was only allowed, and that allowed me to kind of recover. But to me, that was a huge eye opener where I was like, hey, there's something here that I think a lot of people could benefit from, whether you're coming off a surgery or dealing with an injury, because, it allowed me to feel successful but not get hurt. And then I started looking at like all different types of ways to maybe combine the methods with CrossFit, like whether it's doing things that are like hypertrophy finishers or a hybrid program where half the day is, hypertrophy work and the other half is maybe some CrossFit. And I brought it to, Dave and Nicole, who are the directors of training at CrossFit. They approached Camille and I in one of our trainer summits. I think this is like 2017 or sometime around there. And they said, hey, we want you guys to design a course for CrossFit, like a specialty course. And I was like, oh, perfect. I got it. CrossFit hypertrophy. It'll be freaking awesome. Like I've got the methods. I'm already doing it. I've got all the science. Like it'll be a totally awesome baller course. And it got shot down immediately. They literally didn't even get the words out before they shot it down. They're like, what do you mean, bicep curls and CrossFit? No. I'm like, no, that's not it. There are these mechanisms. There's mechanical loading and muscle micro tearing and time under tension and metabolic stress. And you can manipulate the movements and so you can still do the functional movements. And they just weren't getting it. And I said, hey, why don't I just write a journal article about it? So I started writing about the process of hypertrophy, and it was a paper that I termed Hypertrophy for Functional Fitness. And the subtitle is like Bridging the Gap Between Performance and Aesthetics. And it basically is one long argument arguing for more hypertrophy training for athletes that are injured or that want to increase their performance or that are interested in pursuing aesthetics, whether it be, orthopedic function or, increasing someone's contractile potential or just giving somebody the aesthetics that they want through still using CrossFit. And it went from like a couple pages, and the more I started writing about it, there's so many layers to this, it became longer, and it ended up being this 100-page, I don't even call it an article, it was a book. Yeah. And I called them back, I was like, hey, I got 100 pages, it's probably like a 5 or 6 part series. And I was talking to the director of the CrossFit Journal, and I said, hey, if I give you guys this article, would you own it? Because I had put like 6 months into it. And they said, yeah, if you give it to us, we technically own it. And I said, well, forget that. I'm going to put it out myself. And that's where I started the Thundrbro site, because I was like, I want a place to put this book out. And so I just got a Shopify website. And the idea of Thundrbro is like just that journey that I took from like going someone who was defeated to someone who just wanted to bring thunder and like, just try to be awesome. And that book was that's the title of that book, Hypertrophy for Functional Fitness. And it's a theory text. And then along with it, we launched that program that I used, the 90-Day Get Huge program. And I was like, I was actually really nervous. I did this project with my partner or somebody he was really excited about it too. And I said, hey, do you want to go in on this together? We'll put a couple $1,000 in. I think we put like $3,000 into the website and to produce the books and to make like a t-shirt or something. And I remember the first day I'm like, oh man, I'm so nervous. I really hope we make our money back. Like I really hope that people, this isn't a huge waste, because my buddy was a gym owner. He get out of his own pocket and everything like that. And I'm like, I just want people to have this info. And we made it back in the first hour. And I was like, holy shit, like people are really hungry for this. Like I was like, holy cow. And that just evolved into a bunch of different programs, like getting now and exploring the bodybuilding space as a competitor. Like I have learned so much. The first time I walked into the gym that I train at, they look at you really weird when you tell them you're a CrossFitter. So I walked in like a regular jerk, and I was like, hey, my name's Dave and I'm a CrossFitter and I want to compete in bodybuilding. And they're like, okay, kid, like good luck, pal. And I think that people in the bodybuilding world are really impressed by CrossFitters by how hard they work and how committed they are. Like we're used to like grinding, like we're not afraid to work hard. And so, in 6 months I went and I won my first show. And then after winning, I was like, I got to learn more. So I actually got a trainer who's an amazing trainer. He trains like a ton of IFBB pros. And I learned a lot of new different types of training methods that were so cool and complex and different that I was like, man, I got to give like CrossFitters exposure to these methods because they're awesome. They're kick ass. And so we started a program called Muscle Anarchy, where we incorporate advanced bodybuilding concepts with functional movements done with like a barbell or a set of dumbbells. And we kind of tack that on with like a little CrossFit workout and some extra stuff from here and there. And that became that's like our biggest program. We have thousands of athletes in that program now. But that was just from me wanting to share these things that I was learning from these really elite trainers in a completely different place. After competing now in a few shows, I'm not going to do this year because I don't want to go. We're supposed to do the biggest show in America is called USA Nationals. And I was supposed to compete in that one in July, but it's obviously we're not going to go because of the coronavirus. Yeah. But like you learn so much about diet, about the process of cutting within the context of aesthetics. And there are so many things that we've kind of branched off into. Now we have like a Thunder Cuts program, which is the diet plus the training and, nutrition coaching and all these things. And I think the most exciting thing to me was like learning new things and now figuring out like if I'm like a painter and I've got like painting a canvas, like I've got all these new colors I can play with now, which are cool because I love, especially like athletes, whether they're CrossFitters or they've never done this before, it's really cool to give them exposure to something new that's effective.
So
that was a handful.
So on my count from your website, I think I counted 7 programs that you have available now.
Yeah, we have a lot. Some of them are books, and some of them are live programs, and they all kind of evolve organically based on the feedback we get. So, for instance, I was doing these. I was on the road teaching seminars, and I would take like a buddy of mine, and I'd be like, "Hey, let's go down to the hotel gym and do a workout." And we do a CrossFit workout, and then I would come up with some kind of like hypertrophy finisher. And sometimes I would film it and post it and be like, hey, try this crazy fucking terrible complex with like dumbbells or bands or whatever. And people became really interested in that. And I thought, well, why don't I just create an inventory of like 100 of them? And so we came up with this book called The 100 Hypertrophy Finishers That Crush, which are all short, like 10-minute workouts that you can do maybe after your CrossFit workout, or you could put 3 of them together for maybe like a short workout if you're in a hotel, but none of it's really over like 50 pounds or anything like that. And it's an index that's all organized by body part, by movement function, that are just great ways. Like if you're a gym owner, you can flip through that and go like, hey, we're going to do this at the end of my class. And then gyms started tagging us in their stuff, like doing our finishers at the end of class. Another one that kind of came up organically was like the Shredded at Home program, where people were like, hey, I'm just at home. I just have a set of dumbbells. I don't have that much time. I think a lot of people are in that boat, especially who have careers and kids and stuff, that we basically condensed what is a much larger, robust program into just like the meat and potatoes of like, here's a 40-minute workout with dumbbells only, where you get some conditioning and some hypertrophy and you kind of hit it and quit it. And then the Thunder Cuts thing was literally like, I'd learned so much about fat loss and cutting for these shows, that I wanted to share that system. And I said, why don't we provide a nutrition framework, a system that includes like a nutrient timing schedule and how to calculate your calories and how to progress. One of the things that we do is we do these dietary rotations where you start to rotate, let's say it's cutting, it would be a caloric deficit, but it would be rotating lower days with higher days, or either working in a deficit where, you're introducing refeed days or extra deficit days over the course of a longer period of time, where calories kind of progressively move down, along with increasing the training frequency so you can kind of keep pushing the body fat down, or even the way that we preserve muscle mass by balancing anabolic signals like feeding around heavy lifting with catabolic signals where you're doing cardio in a mostly fasted state. We put that and packaged it all into one book, and we said, hey, here's the Thundercuts book. And originally we're like, we'll see if people have success with it. And we launched it as a book. Well, first we launched it as a challenge, and I was so surprised. This is like a nine week program, and we launched it as a challenge. I'm like, all right, we'll see how people do. And we had some people lost like 30 pounds using the system, and I was like, holy cow. And one of the hard things about new athletes, because we're always trying to bring new athletes into our program, is like 9 weeks is a lot of time to commit to. So we took that same system and we tried to market it as just a 30-day challenge. So now we have like the 30-day shred, which is the same system, but it's just like, people are competing for cash for the biggest body transformation. I'm losing my headphones. So yeah, I mean, this stuff all kind of like evolves organically. Yeah. Based on like what people seem to be interested in. And I don't know what the next thing is. Like people are now, I'm hearing things like people want to do like a get huge challenge, right? So they want like, what's the, maybe that challenge where it's all centered around nutrition and training for putting on muscle mass to see who can pack on the most size. And we have some of our athletes that are older that are interested in heading up like a master's program of Thundrbro, like Thundrbro Masters. In fact, one of the guys who was interested in doing that, did you guys ever watch Gladiators before?
Oh yeah.
Okay, so Nitro from Gladiator.
Oh yeah.
So wants to be our spokesperson for like Thundrbro Masters. So yeah, like it's kind of taken its own life in some ways, but the core message is still the same. It's like just finding ways to blend the gap between performance and aesthetics, and bringing new ideas into CrossFit so that people can, it's simple. Like I just want to train and look good and not be hurt. That's it. It's nothing complicated.
So one of the reasons I wanted to have you on was a little bit selfish. I just turned 50. Yep. I used to weigh over 500 pounds. I lost over 200 doing CrossFit, but my back has given out.
Yep.
A couple times on me, and I'm frustrated with the constant injuries. And so what program would I reach for to try to get back to something more stable?
So I think like what's valuable is just to kind of view the injury process from a broader perspective. Like if you're injured, let's say you have a shitty shoulder or a bad back or a bad knee, the first thing you want to do is remove the pain triggers. And unfortunately, what people do is they just say, oh, my back's hurt, I'm going to rest, and they go back to doing what they were doing before. And that kind of puts them on this almost like a Ferris wheel, right? You're just going around and around in the same journey. Like, I hurt my back, I rested, I hurt it again. And unfortunately, the biggest precursor for a back injury is a previous back injury, because the way the discs in the back work is there are these fibrous discs that are, they're called the annulus of the disc. And they're just like fibers in a shirt. And if you can imagine, when you get a tear in a fiber, you like went back and forth like this on your shirt, those fibers would start to become loose. Right. And generally in the perspective of the back, they're becoming loose because you're losing spinal position under some weight. Okay. And so they have the ability to almost delaminate. Okay. And become loose. So the best thing to do is actually to give them some time to heal and recover and create those adhesions again so that the disc has a little bit more integrity, which usually means stopping the lifting or stopping the compressive loading on the spine. That would probably be the first thing. Is usually it's like the bending. The bending is usually where people get the triggers for, some kind of hip hinge is where they usually get the triggers. And if it's a bend with a twist, that's even worse, because now you're creating slack in those fibers where they can actually have a more propensity to delaminate like that. So first remove those movements that you know are triggers. So like, let's say if your shoulder hurts when you're bench pressing the straight bar, stop bench pressing the straight bar. Just don't do that. Let the joint heal a little bit. The second thing you'd want to do is find some exercises or physical therapy that provides some relief. Right. So in the case of the back, there's so many different resources for fixing back pain, but the most common one that I found that helps most people is called the McKenzie back protocol. And it's an extension-based back protocol because when people get these bulging discs or annular tear stuff, usually it's because they spend a lot of time doing what you're all doing, what I'm doing right now, just like sitting and hunched over, where the spine is in a little bit of flexion, and that pushes the discs out toward the posterior side of the back, and the ligaments on the inside of the spine become shortened, and the ones that's on the outside become a little lengthened. So the disc basically ends up just popping out and getting out of position like a jelly donut. All that jelly gets pushed towards one side. Okay. So doing these extension-based exercises is a great way to reclaim the lumbar curve, because the spine is like a shock absorber. So that S curvature is a very effective shock absorber. But when that S curvature starts to straighten out at the bottom, now all those lower discs start taking those compressive forces. So those extension exercises are great. When people are acute, usually have them do that maybe 7 times a day. That's it. It may be as simple as laying on your elbows or doing the press-ups with the holds, but that's what you kind of do for the acute phase. Then once you can train again, figure out some movements that allow you to avoid pain. So maybe if deadlifting is a trigger, that's fine. Maybe you're not deadlifting off the floor, but maybe it's something like we're doing rack pulls, and maybe instead of going heavy, it's lighter, or maybe it's just building up the musculature around the spine to make up for some type of pathology in the spine or in the discs, right? So it's a different process, but that's kind of the overview. So what I do for myself, for instance, is like, I've got a bad back. I will very rarely pull anything off the ground. I know that's a trigger. I just try to avoid it at all costs. What I'll do is I'll do RDLs, and I'll do it with lightweight. And sometimes I can build up heavier, but I'm always kind of listening to it. The press ups are something that's just part of my daily routine. And I work on a lot of different bracing exercises, as well as a lot of back exercises, even things that are great for developing your lower lats, that are great for aesthetics, right? Bent over rows, chest supported rows, all these things are great for the back without the compressive loading on the spine like you might have in, say, something like a back squat. I don't back squat heavy, but I can leg press thousands of pounds because there's no compressive force on the back in a leg press. So, maybe my back squatting looks like things that are a lot more lower weight, higher rep, and slow tempos. So there's a lot of hypertrophic effect to get the muscles to grow, but I'm not doing the really heavy mechanical loading on the spine with it. I'm using other mechanisms to train the spine and the leg if I'm going to do it that way. And then, there are certain things where you can go heavy, like the leg press, you can go heavy. A belt squat, you can go heavy because you don't have those elements there. And that sort of thing, our stuff has a lot of utility for that because it's like the broken man's program. I love hearing athletes that are like, dude, first time I'm doing this and I don't feel hurt, and my muscles are finally starting to grow, or just that idea of not feeling defeated. Because when you get injured, it just sucks. It's such a kick in the pants, takes the wind out of your sails, and it kind of puts you in a thought process where you're like, well, I guess I'm getting older. I guess I can't do this. And I know for me, when I would get hurt, I would focus so much on the things that I couldn't do that I didn't even see all the things that I could do, right? I didn't even consider hypertrophy. I didn't even consider certain other movements. I was just like, well, if I can't squat clean and deadlift, how am I ever going to do CrossFit? I'm not going to be able to do it. I'm like, that's bullshit. You don't need to. You can still meet your goals and have what you want. And like I said, because I was surrounded with the people I was surrounded with games athletes and with seminar staff, their thinking is quite myopic. It's just CrossFit. That's it. That's the only thing, right? Games, that's the only thing. And it's hard to get out of that if that's what you're always surrounded by. You're the average of the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 closest people around you, right?
Yeah.
Awesome.
So you're certainly passionate about your new programming. So where can we tell our listeners to access it? Would this be on your website? And is it through a subscription service, or how do they access?
So, what we do now is, and I think we're going to continue this because it's really fun for me to connect with people. We do live workouts every day on YouTube at 10 a.m. Eastern.
Okay.
it's our Dumbbell Anarchy program. But like, if somebody's interested and they're like, I want to kind of see what this is about, they can go through a workout with us using dumbbells only and start to explore the methods with like the tempos and the isometrics and the overload eccentrics and the drop sets and the half reps and all that stuff. Like we throw all that in there where people kind of just get a little bit of a taste of it. And those live on there. Even if you don't make the live workout, they live on our YouTube channel where you can kind of see the archives. Our site is thundrbro.com. So it's Thunder with no E. So it's like Thundrbro.
Okay.
And the reason why we did that is intentional because, like what we say we're doing is like we're bridging the gap between bro science and real science. So we have a ton of content on there about physiology and the adaptation process and the SAID principle. Those are specific adaptations for imposed demand. And like, we don't just say things, but we try to see what's inside the black box. I'm sure you guys heard the black box theory. CrossFit likes to throw this around a lot. Yeah. So like the black box theory is like, hey, we give you thrusters and burpees and there's a black box and we don't know exactly what's happening, but the result is you lose body fat and you can do more work. Okay.
Yeah.
My thinking is that I want to know what's in that black box. And so we really look at the mechanisms in your body to help target training the right way, to figure out exactly what you need and just understanding the adaptations. Like if you're a trainer, there's no reason where you shouldn't really know the anatomy of a muscle fiber or the adaptations that take place. It's only responsible to know what you're doing to somebody. So like we really pride ourselves on the education and building knowledge on the physiology part. And then you can clearly see all the things we talk about there clearly match up with the program. So we have some book programs, our popular programs, the Muscle Anarchy one. I think it's the coolest one because I love doing it. Like that's my favorite one. And like I said, that's how I've always gotten clients is people want to train with me and do the programming I'm doing. So I think as a gym owner or a trainer, like it's a huge advantage to do your program because one, it builds credibility, right? Everyone's going to do it. Like 1 degree shittier. So like if you don't do the program, they're going to wonder why you're asking them to do it, and it gives you a better knowledge of what you're giving people because by exposing yourself to it, you start to gain a really acute understanding of like, well, how much is too much and how much is not enough and how heavy should the weight be and how many reps should they aim for, like all that stuff. So I really recommend if you're a trainer out there, like do your own programming because it makes you a better coach and a better programmer.
Absolutely. So on a more personal note, how did you and Camille meet?
We met at Lake. Well, we met a couple times. The first time I met her was at the games in, I think it was 2010. And she had just done this workout, Amanda, she's awesome. And anyways, no, the girl Amanda, Camille was awesome, but Amanda was really awesome. Amanda Miller. And she comes down the field into there's kind of like an underground area there. And she really I don't know why, the first time I saw her I was like, oh my God, I went to my friend James and I'm like, man, I'd really love to date that girl. It's too bad she's from the Ukraine or whatever. And, cause she was just smiling and beautiful. And she just had this amazing aura about her that she looked like a princess. She just looked like a princess. And so I kind of saw her there. And then later in the year, we ended up competing on the same team together. And this was back when there really weren't many sponsors in CrossFit. There were just two equipment sponsors, Rogue and again Faster, they used to be a middleman equipment distributor. And they had these two teams. They created this competition where they were going to have Team Rogue versus Team Again Faster, almost like the Real World Road Rules Challenge. Yeah. Remember those? We had these cabins. And it was like fitness in the woods, and Dave was up there and he come up with these workouts and stuff, and you could do challenges where you could challenge one other guy, or you could challenge one guy and one girl, or whatever combination you want. It could be 2-on-2, 3-on-3, 4-on-4, it doesn't really matter. And you would kind of put together these challenges where you compete for, it's like a team competition. That actually turned into the Invitational. That was the first version of the Invitational, was that Tahoe Throwdown. And yeah, I met Camille there and we instantly connected, and really, I don't know if it's possible, but I think we really just loved each other immediately. And she lived in Canada and I lived in San Diego. And, when we went back, I think we both realized that we wanted to try to be together or change our lives at least. So I moved to Boston, and in the first year, like every weekend, I would drive up to Montreal or she'd drive down to Boston. And, it just happened really quick. Like we were living together within a few months and we were married within the year. And, we just, I think I had some girlfriends in the past, and you have a girlfriend, you have relationships, and you're like, yeah, they're cool. It's a relationship, but this was just markedly different, where it was just really clear. I'm like, oh, this is the person I'm supposed to spend the rest of my life with for sure. Yeah. So the hard thing to figure out was how to do that, not whether it was the right decision or not.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was it.
So here's another question for you. So being a competitive athlete yourself, and I know you then went on to go and coach Camille and with some of her successes, did you get more nervous competing yourself or watching her compete?
I don't know. Like this is the thing about like the competition in her, like I'd already had a professional career before CrossFit, a professional sport before CrossFit. So CrossFit to me was just like this fun thing, but my goal with competing or training or anything was just to develop professionally or to have it benefit me professionally. So I'm like, yeah, I'm doing this so that I have credibility, so people are interested in what I have to say, so I can give them good information. So it wasn't because I was like, I want to be the fittest man on earth. Like, no, I just want to show that I can hang with anybody, and I'm a really good athlete and a good coach. So it was a little different for me. For her, I learned through my sports experience that when you do, pursue a grand venture, like I want to be a Major League Baseball player or I want to be a world champion, it takes like a village, and it's a tremendous sacrifice personally. Like when I was a baseball player, I would have been a terrible boyfriend because all I was interested in was baseball and everything else came second. And so, having had that experience, I understood what Camille needed to do and how we would balance that, and she was super cool. Like we would spend 8 hours in the gym and I would train her, and sometimes I wouldn't get much attention, but like every week she would give me a David day where she would take me to the San Diego Zoo and buy me ice cream. And I'm like, yeah, I'm cool with that because I get it. A lot of husbands or wives don't get that because it's like your window in your athletic career is so small. And the last thing you want to do if you have the talent and the motivation to pursue it is to look back and say, oh, I could have done this, or I could have done that, or I wish I would have gone in, because then you just get resentful for all the people that pushed you out of that. And everyone will give you resistance when you do that. Everyone will be like, why are you doing this? Are you sure it's a good idea? Like we even got that from my parents. They're like, are you sure you guys want to travel around the country just bringing Camille to these coaches? And until she won, they didn't get it. And when she won, she was like, that was really smart. Good work. But it's the pursuit. Like when you understand that grand pursuit, I think it's a lot easier to be on board with that, as opposed to somebody who maybe has never experienced that before. It can be a really tough pill to swallow.
Sure. Certainly.
Well, we don't want to take any more of your time. You've been awesome to spend this much time with us.
Yeah.
And we definitely learned a lot. I think I said on an Instagram post, you are wicked smart, man.
Oh, thanks. I'm learning. Like I think good coaches are probably lifetime learners. And like now I'm learning a lot about business, and I think I'm learning a lot about how to appropriately deliver new information to coaches that are resistant to it. Because that was kind of like exactly where CrossFit started. Like everyone was very resistant to CrossFit when it came on the scene. I mean, the old level ones used to be like a battleground, and obviously they were able to break that. So I'm trying to figure out the right way to just, not impose my views on people, but just show them different paths.
Well, with this next path that you're going down, if you ever need any advice or expertise, you can come call on us. That's actually my background. My background, besides CrossFit, is our early childhood education and development. So.
Oh wow! Well, thank you so much. Yeah. It's been an adventure because we came down here, and we're obviously not where our obstetrician was, like back in Colorado. And we tried to find an obstetrician down here, and we called around, and no one would even take Camille. And then we found a doctor to take Camille, and we walked into the office. And before we walked in, I noticed there was a lady like walking in with a face mask, and then a nurse came out of these sliding glass doors wearing like a full-on biohazard suit. I said, yeah, it looks like Doc Brown, like coming out of a DeLorean with his nuclear suit.
Yeah.
And she comes up with a clipboard, and she's like, "Hey, are you guys sick?" And we're like, "No." And she goes, "Oh, well, you should leave then." So we now have to drive like 90 minutes to Naples, Florida, just to take Cammy to her obstetrician appointments that I can't even go in to see.
Yeah.
And like, I don't know, it's been an adventure. We don't know. We're supposed to know the sex of the baby a long time ago. We don't even know it because she's so behind on blood work and testing.
Yeah.
We're just trying to catch up right now. But hopefully everything is super good and solid. And we pray every day that we're going to be good parents and that we get a healthy baby.
Yeah. Well, be well. And thanks so much for talking with us.
Yeah. Thank you, guys.
And just to remind our listeners, they can check you out every morning at 10 a.m. on YouTube to see what kind of workouts you're doing. And if they're interested in that, they can go to thunderbros.com and check out your website.
Yeah, totally. So like it's the Thundrbro YouTube, thunderbro.com. I'm at Dave freaking Lipson. And, you know, if anybody has questions or anything, like we're really good. Like we pride ourselves on under promising and over delivering. So like we're really good at customer service. If you send us a DM, we get back to you. We try to answer every single question or comment, even if it's just a question about like, hey, what should I eat or what should I train? Like we really try to just give as much as we can. So yeah, thank you so much, Scott.
Hey, no problem. And Dave freaking Lipson is one of the best Instagram handles ever.
Oh, yeah. I can't believe I got that one. I'd be so mad if I had to be Dave freaking Lipson 1. That would have been terrible.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much for taking the time out. We really appreciate it.
All right.
And, good luck to you and Cammy with the baby, and have a great weekend.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you, guys.
Bye, Dave.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
So that was a really interesting interview with Dave. You know, he really got into the details of hypertrophy and how that can really help build your tendons and ligaments and kind of stave off some injury just by doing slow progressions through that. He's just a really smart dude. And he talks at a level that like I really have to focus to kind of pay attention, but man, he really is smart.
And I think we'll put the links to his books at the end of this podcast.
Yeah, we'll do it to his website, and everything's listed there.
Perfect. Awesome.
Yeah, that was fun.
So we talked last week about Mayhem doing their own team competition, and I wanted to kind of expand on that because they released the details of that competition this week. And I think that, you know, we kind of talked about, is it possible that a third party could kind of take over what the team competition or the age group competition may look like from CrossFit? And I think with this step of what Rich is doing with the Mayhem Madness, I think this is the first step of them taking over the team competition. They are able to do things that CrossFit can't do. Mm-hmm. One, they have a very deep knowledge of team competitions and what they should look like. And so what they're doing is it is a 6-day event, 6 days of competition, 8 days that it's going to take place over. And the first 2 days, there will be 12 teams. They will take a rest day, and then they will go to 8 teams for 2 days. Then they'll take a rest day, and they'll go to 4 teams for the final 2 days. They are not going to have a heat bigger than 4 teams per heat, so 4 lanes. So it'll be easier to see the people on the floor. And I think the coolest concept of this is in a way to show that they're not going to be biased in the programming. They're taking all old regional and games workouts. If the weights were too low for today's athlete, they're going to up them to what they should be today, but not really change them all that much. They will all be posted what's available. And then through the online competition, you will earn a seeding. So even if you've already qualified through a sanctional, to get a seeding for this event, you need to do the online qualifier. Number 1 seed gets the first pick of the workout that they want to see in the competition, and they get to place it on the schedule where they think it best benefits them.
Dang.
And so on. Mayhem Independence and Mayhem Freedom are not participating in the picking of the workout.
Okay.
To show that they're not biased or anything like that. So, thoughts?
So does that mean that a team could pick a workout for like day 4 and then maybe not even make it to day 4 to do the workout?
That does mean that.
Okay.
Ooh, interesting.
Yeah.
This is a lot of strategy in here.
A lot of gameplay.
A lot of.
Well, and do you pick your workout and put it like the workout before the cut?
Right.
Do you pick it at first to get out to a lead? You know, do you think?
Are you picking a workout that's maybe not necessarily your wheelhouse, but something that's going to screw up somebody else, right? Like if you're 2 points behind another team and you know that, you know, something is their GOAT, you do pick that and have them, you know, maybe falter and get you guys ahead. Yeah, there's tons of ways to carve it.
So I think there's 6 to 8 workouts per 2-day block.
Ooh.
So the draft will go to 15. And then the rest of the workouts, they're going to put online for the fans to vote where to put.
Yeah, and to your point, this is not something that the CrossFit Games in Madison over the course of 3 days could ever possibly do, right? They couldn't pivot that quickly in terms of what events they were going to be, and they're way too produced ahead of time and everything else, that there's too many judges to brief and everything else. This way, if you only have 4 teams competing, you only really need 4 judges, right?
Yeah.
So that could be really easy to manage.
8 at most if you need 2 judges on the lane.
Right.
And from a person who worked the games, the transitions between events would be impossible to do this at the games.
Yeah, along with individuals and age groups and all that. Like it would, yeah. No, I think it's awesome.
So Mayhem taking over this, does that mean Mayhem done with their sanctionals?
So no, I don't believe so. I think that they can do both. Okay. And that it's going to be a moneymaker for them. The other thing that I need to add in here is Rich did get the blessing of CrossFit HQ, and this team competition is sanctioned. It's not a sanctional,
okay,
but they are sanctioning this as a CrossFit event.
Okay.
And they're in talks of actually awarding the affiliate cup.
Yeah.
At the end of this.
Yeah, so this is exactly what you were talking about, Amy, like it being the thing.
Right. Yeah, just make it known. If it's going to be the thing, just know it. Yeah.
So it starts on Sunday, the last day of the games for individuals.
Okay.
And then we'll run the week after. So for us CrossFit geeks,
that's amazing.
We get an individual competition running into a team competition. So like a week and a half of straight CrossFit fun.
Yeah.
And some rest days to spend some time with our family.
Yeah. Get some work done, you know.
Well, just so that, I think we spend time with our families so that it will be okay when we go back and binge watch the whole next day.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm really excited about that. I think the format is awesome. I think Rich has really done a good job of kind of thinking this out from a fan's perspective.
So will there be spectators? Like what's the deal there?
They are holding off on announcing anything about spectators till they see what Tennessee looks like at that time. So he said on Talking Elite Fitness that they're looking at early July to kind of make a decision as to what they're going to do with spectators.
Cool.
But they're still open to having spectators. They just want to make sure that everything conforms and allows that to happen.
Awesome.
They don't want to sell tickets and then have to turn around and take them back.
Yeah.
So let's move on to another big news item, and that is the Gillette sponsorship for many of the Rogue Invitational male athletes. And it actually starts this weekend through the Rogue Invitational. They signed Matt Frazier, Patrick Vellner, Cole Sager, Jacob Hepner, Chandler Smith, Noah Olson, Travis Mayer, and Saxon Panchek.
That's awesome.
That is it. That's a major industry that is signing a deal with CrossFit athletes, and not just one of them, but several of them. It's a great way for them to make money and become professional athletes.
Yeah, and it's a great way to highlight or to introduce other people who may not be so aware of CrossFit.
Right. It's the first like mainstream brand that I can think of, that's not necessarily sports related, right? Everybody wears deodorant, hopefully.
So, Chipotle kind of jumped in on the Matt and Tia thing.
Yeah.
By naming burritos after them, their favorite burritos. And that they've hung on to that through the COVID piece.
Yeah.
And are using that as a fundraiser. So Chipotle was kind of number one, but they stuck with just a small group. This one's massive.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome.
And really kind of spreads out the wealth amongst a lot of the top end athletes. Rogue brings in the top, 15 athletes from the games. So look what that means to finish in the top 15 at the games. Now you're starting to get included in these types of ads to help support yourself.
Yeah, it's very cool.
Yeah.
And I use that product, so I guess.
So you're going to be top 15 at the games. Is that what it means?
So if they want a podcast to sponsor,
there you go.
I do use the Gillette Cool Gel for my deodorant. So there we go.
Hashtag Gillette.
Not that we're pimping ourselves out there, but we are. All right. So we're to that point in the week where Amy's always prepared. And that is our favorite thing from the internet.
My favorite thing on the internet has been the Reese's battle that we started with our former guest Dex and Chandler Smith. So they've been going back and forth, and then other people have been included and tagging us and tagging Dex on the appropriate Reese's cup snacks.
Are we count or what? Like, are we winning? Are we losing?
Oh, I mean, it depends on whose poll you look at, but we would say Dex wins. But maybe if Chandler came on here, maybe we could tell him that he wins. I don't know. He hasn't.
Yeah. So the polls that I did and that Dex did, Cups won. Chandler has a poll that shows that the fast break wins, but Dex claims that it was photoshopped.
Okay. I love it.
I never thought that an interview on our show would create this online battle for what is the best Reese's cup, but Reese's treat.
Yeah.
Very cool. All right. So mine's a little more serious. It's still around training though. So gymnastics, right? That's my go-to thing that I kind of suck at and that I'm working on. But there's a Instagram video of Matt Healey. You guys know Matt Healey? He is a level 3 coach. Oh no, wait, that's my profile on Instagram. Hold on. Where is he? He's the owner of DDW Fitness, the Athletic Blueprint. I don't know if you've heard of that, but I want to say, I know he's friends with Khan, our buddy Khan. And that's, I think, how I started following him, but I've been following him for years. Anyway, he has this video. Looks like he's in his garage or his bedroom or something on a pull-up bar, and he's doing a strict muscle up from an L-sit position, like multiple times. Now, he doesn't get into like full lockout over the bar, which is not the hard part of this anyway, but he's literally going up and down, like almost doing a strict muscle up in an L-sit and then like a very slow negative down, like 3 or 4 times.
That's amazing.
I just thought it was really impressive. So Matt Healey, that's Healey. And we'll link his Instagram down there, but I thought that was pretty cool.
And the best thing is we now have another blooper for our reel.
Yeah, there you go. That was so funny. I'm like, wait, no, that's me.
Oh, that's an impressive.
It's great to see you're stalking yourself on Instagram.
Fat fingers.
All right, so I'm going to start mine off with one of the worst things on the internet this week.
Ooh.
And that is that Tommy and Sean did their podium picks for best breakfast cereal. Their taste in cereal is awful. Awful.
Let's hear it.
Cinnamon Chex. I thought Cinnamon Chex was a good solid pick. And that was That actually didn't make the list. I think that was on Tommy's runner-up list. But
Yeah,
that would have been my pick. Cinnamon checks. Go ahead.
So Cinnamon Life is my favorite of all time.
Totally. I could totally get down with that.
Was not on any of the lists. But the thing that offended me the most is that Sean Woodland said that Wheaties was the best cereal of all time. That stuff is god awful.
Yeah.
It's not tasty at all.
The only reason you would even buy it is because your favorite team is on the box.
The only reason they have good advertising.
Yes. But the actual cereal is like, it cuts the roof of your mouth. It's like a nasty cornflake. If I want a cornflake, I'll eat a cornflake.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Not a wheat flake.
Right.
The only thing worse, I think, is shredded wheat.
Yeah.
Which is
true.
It like tastes like a Brillo pad. I don't even know how anyone.
Okay. I'm going to add to that though. There was this one cereal. I can't find it anymore, but it was even called Shreds, and it was like shredded Wheaties, but it had peanut butter and chocolate on it, and it was like eating ice cream in the bowl. It was fantastic. It was really good.
So my second favorite cereal is Peanut Butter Crunch.
Okay.
And it didn't make it either. They had Crunch Berries, the worst of the Captain cereals.
Yeah, agreed.
Oh, anyway, so I just had to like at least get that off my chest because that was awful. So my best thing from the internet was yesterday's edition of the Buttery Bros.
Yeah.
Doing Murph, and then doing the weight gain challenge for 10 hours, and combined gained 18 pounds in 10 hours.
I was so uncomfortable. I was in bed last night watching that, and my belly ached just watching them eat all that stuff. It was crazy.
But see, I would want to see what they would weigh the next day. Because,
they'd be back to probably lose half of it, more than half.
It's not an actual pound that they're really gaining, because that would be 1 pound is 3,500 calories. There's no way they could consume that many amount of calories to maintain.
They gained whatever the contents of their belly was.
Right.
That's all. Yeah.
Well, it just looked like my 30s. So when I had gotten up to 500 pounds, so it didn't really look different to me, but
yeah.
And then the last thing I want to finish up with is what was really cool to see. And I don't know if you saw this, but Joe Rogan, I was tuning into him because he was reacting to the Mike Tyson news, and he was very conflicted back and forth as to whether he had a realistic shot at coming back or not. And every time he wanted to like check himself, he was like, but that video, oh my goodness, like just back and forth, which I thought was funny. But the big news is he signed a deal, an exclusive deal with Spotify for $100 million.
$100 million.
As a podcaster, that looked really cool to me.
That's cool.
So got some goals, guys.
Get on it.
All right.
Well, we didn't talk about our training week. I don't know. Let's talk about, since this is going to air the day after Memorial Day, right? What are your Murph plans? Do you have Murph plans?
I'm doing it on Monday.
With a vest? Without a vest?
With a vest, but we have to do a little bit of field repair because I broke part of the clasp on mine. I was training with my vest, and I came in from around and I threw it down, and then the weight plates just smacked the clasp off. And so I ordered a repair kit. I'm not sure if it will work exactly right, but my husband's going to help do something so I can fix it.
Okay. And you've done Murph with a weight vest before, right?
Yeah. Last year's my first time doing it with a vest, but like my goal, and it's, I kind of got this goal from just talking with our owner of the gym. His goal was, he never wanted to wear a vest until he got to under 40 minutes doing Murph the regular way. Well, I was like, yeah, that sounds like a good goal. So the same year he got it, my time was 40.03. And I was like, that's close enough. So I wore a vest last year. So I'll wear one.
Are you going to break it up or go straight through?
Oh, I break it up. I do Cindy for sure.
Cindy. Okay. I'm going to probably do half Murph again.
Yeah.
I probably won't wear a vest. So, and that's the plan for Monday.
Yeah. And I'm going to bring Murph with me, and he has his own vest.
Will he run with you?
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Murph the dog we're talking about. If anybody.
Murph the dog will run with me to do Murph. Yep.
Cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
Happy Memorial Day.
Last year I was injured going into Murph, and I did the full Murph with an assault bike instead of a run. No vest. I've got plenty of that.
What are the calories for a mile on a assault bike?
I did 100 each way.
Oh, nice. Okay.
And I crushed the front end of that. When I got on that thing for the last 100, it felt like it took me 6 hours.
Well, that's what it feels like the last mile of the run. So that's adequate.
And I did it full, and then I was devastated for a week. I think it would be not smart of me to do a full version of that this year. So, plus I have the cast back on my legs. Yay.
Right.
So I'll probably do a version of it, modified and reduced.
Yeah. I had a client today who did, I won't see her on Monday, and she ran a 400, did 5 rounds of Cindy, ran a 400, did 5 rounds of Cindy, and then ran a 400. We called it a day.
Yeah.
Essentially a half Murph. So
yeah,
a little less, but
yeah, cool. I'll probably do something with the bike again, because I can do that with the casts, and I can air squat, I can push up, and I'll probably do ring rows, because I haven't done any pull-ups since the quarantine.
I'm toying around with the idea of doing is it 2, 3, 4 or 2, 3, 4, 5, whatever the one is where you break up the push. See, push-ups are my big thing. Like, push-ups are the thing that I can't always do unbroken. And I would love to be able to go through it and be able to do all of my push-ups unbroken. I'm trying to figure out maybe if I do like 5 push-ups, 5 pull-ups, 5 push-ups, 5 air squat, or 15 air squats or something like that. But there's another way. I think it's like 30 rounds of whatever that math is. And the numbers just get real small. Or like 50 rounds of 1, 2, 3 even. Isn't that a thing?
Yeah. Like Arm & Hammer has like,
yeah, I saw that.
Is it the 1, 2, 3? I think
it's 1, 2, 3. It must be 1, 2, 3, 50 rounds, right? That would be 100, 200, 300.
No, it'd be 100 rounds.
Yeah, it'd be 100 rounds.
2, 3, 4. 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3. Math is not my thing.
It would have to be 2, 4,
2, 4, 6. But your transitions have to be, that becomes like a cardio workout, right? Like you can't dilly dally on the.
Yeah, your push-up becomes a burpee.
Yeah, exactly. Interesting. I'd rather do 100 burpees than run a mile.
Nope.
Really wouldn't want to do either of those.
Well, we'll see. We'll have something to talk about next time, but hopefully everybody had a good Memorial Day weekend and remembered why we do it and was smart about it.
Yeah. And if you want to comment about how your Murph went, or how you broke it up, or how you did it, go ahead and leave that comment below. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button, hit that notifier so you know when we have a new podcast coming out. And we'll see you next week on the Clydesdale CrossFitter and Friends.
Bye.
See ya.